Hi, vloggers. Okay, so we need a universal signal about the bra. If you can see it, go like this. Okay? Not kidding. I want to thank Roger for that lovely introduction. A couple years ago, I did a reading at a bookstore that had had a flood, and they had to reschedule. And when I came 3 days later to do the reading, they held it in the loading dock, basically, of this bookstore. And the manager is leading me back to this room, and he is incredibly apologetic. He's saying, "We've never had to do a reading back here before. I'm so sorry. I hope this is okay." And I, of course, as the oldest child of divorced parents, am trying to tell him, like, don't worry, it's all going to be fine. I'm sure it'll work. Mom and Dad still love us, even if they can't live together. So we get to this room. I will never forget it. Had a concrete floor with a drain in the center, sort of Jeffrey Dahmer-esque kind of things. And he walked through the crowd, stood behind the podium, leaned into the microphone, looked at the crowd, and said, "Here's Jennifer Weiner. Sorry about the smell." And usually they wait till I'm done speaking before they say that. But it was really awesome. Everybody who came, I signed their books. Thanks for coming. Sorry about the smell. So I'm thrilled to be here. And I want to start by saying I know I'm kind of a slightly freakish choice for this presentation. While I have been happily published by Atria Books, a division of Simon & Schuster, for 12 years and 10 books, I am not a publisher, although I am happy to try to make shit up if you want to ask about how publishers do things. My publisher's actually here somewhere. I hope she makes stuff up about how they do things. Yes, while I have been blogging since 2002, I'm not exactly the kind of book blogger that most of you guys are. My blog is as likely to talk about The Bachelor as it is about publishing. So why me? Who am I and why am I here? I think that what I bring to the table this morning is my own success in the world of social media. I think that I figured out a way to use my blog and Facebook and Twitter and lately Pinterest to have a conversation with my readers, to find my own personal line between the share and the overshare, and not merely deliver a buy my book monologue. So, let me take you back to 2000, when I sold my first book. Lo, these many years ago, there was no such thing as social media. Stephen King's novella, Riding the Bullet, which I remember downloading for 99 cents, reading at my desktop, and hoping my boss at the newspaper wouldn't see me, was presumed to be the future of ebooks, and there were only the most primitive e-readers available. Websites, weblogs, Facebook, Twitter, Tumblr, Kindles, Nooks, and iPads. All of these have emerged in the last decade and have left publishers and authors scrambling to figure out how to use these new technologies to connect books to readers. So I want to start with the good news. There has never been a more exciting time to be part of the conversation about books and reading than there is right now. Once upon a time, when I was young, there was no conversation at all. There was instead a series of overlapping monologues with critics, authors, and readers, each in their separate spheres. The critics would issue their edicts from on high. That's God. It's old school God. I looked for black female God, but couldn't find her on Google Images. Readers would discuss the books in real life and usually in private. And that's my mom's book club right there. Notice what they're not reading. Fuckers. When I went on my first book tour, I took my mom with me, as you do. And we're good with the bra, Megan? Bra's good? Okay, thank you. So I took my mom, and I'd be in the bookstores, like talking to the owners and talking to the clerks and being all nice and pleasant and, like trying to make a good impression. And I would hear my mom, who is super friendly, talking to other bookstore patrons, and she'd say, "I just read the best book." And I'd be like, okay, here it comes. She'd be like, "It had everything. Oh my God, great characters, this amazing plot, and it was funny, and it was moving." And I think, here it comes. And I would turn around just in time to hear her say, "Richard Russo's Independence Falls, have you read it? It is great." I was like, "Fran, okay, no. No. Unless we find out that Mrs. Russo is in Maine hand-selling copies of Good in Bed, you can't do this shit to me, okay? So, critics talk to readers, readers talk to each other, and authors, well, presumably authors were voiceless and silent between books, holed up in their garrets in New Hampshire compounds working on their next opus. That's J.D. Salinger drinking his own urine. He did that. I read that. Okay, so aside from a letter to the editor, a book tour, a reading, a visit to a book club, or if you were Richard Ford, spitting on a critic at a party, authors, I couldn't find a picture of that, I tried. Authors really did not have an avenue for interacting with their critics or their readers. If an author had something to say, she'd say it in her next book. We had 3 separate spheres: critics, authors, and readers. All of them were talking. None of them could talk to each other. So, sad Venn diagram, please. Right? My assistant, Megan Burnett, did the sad Venn diagram. That's Megan, and thank you for that. Neither of us are artistically inclined, but we do our best. Okay. And then along came the internet. Suddenly, readers could talk to each other. That's a Q&A that one of my favorite, this is chicklitisnotdead.com did with Emily Giffen. Is Liz or Lisa from Chicklit Is Not Dead? No, not here? Anyhow. They're awesome and I love them. Okay, so readers could talk to authors. Authors could talk to critics. That's Neil Gaiman chatting with Laura Miller from Salon. Authors could talk to other authors. That's me talking to Gary Steingart. Who thought we would ever see the day? And let's see, authors could talk to other authors. The critical landscape, which had been looking bleak, had been revitalized. Now, anyone with a laptop and an opinion could call him or herself a critic and publish a review on the book of the moment, or the book of 20 years ago, or talk online to other readers and maybe even critics and the author herself about her opinion. The world had opened up. While the world was expanding, so was readers' access to authors' lives. No more was our knowledge of our favorite writer confined to what we could glean from the book jacket and a 20-year-old headshot. And I say 20-year-old headshot because I always in my head thought I'd get a really great one taken and use it till my face fell off. And with the internet, you can't really do that anymore because you just don't want to have that moment in bookstores where you walk in and you say, "Hi, I'm Jennifer Weiner, I'm here to do the reading," and they're looking at the book and looking at you and looking at the book and looking at you, looking at the book and looking at you. And saying, "Can I see some ID, please?" You don't want that. Okay, so we can go to authors' websites, because of course authors all have websites now, not to mention Facebook fan pages and Twitter accounts, and we can see pictures of their houses. That's Jane Green's house. Or their spouses. That's Emily Giffen's husband. Or their I know, right? What the fuck is that? Or their vacations, that's Nicholas Sparks in Italy, someday. Or their kids, and that's Jodi Picoult's daughter/co-author. I gotta figure out how to get my kids to earn some fucking money. They're 9 and 4.5, I think they're ready. Readers can email our thoughts on authors' latest books. We can tweet at Judy Blume. If you're my age, you might wanna just sit with that for a minute. Let it sink. You can tweet at Judy Blume, right? And sometimes she tweets back, and it is awesome. Of course, this brave new world of overlapping conversations and unprecedented access was not without growing pains. Consider the rise and fall of the woman I would identify as the world's first book blogger, Oprah Winfrey. Okay? Yes, okay, Oprah technically did not begin with a book blog. She had a televised book club launched in 1996, lasting until 2010, and inconveniently for me, revised last Friday. Fuck you, Oprah. My speech was done. Okay, but if Toni Morrison can call Bill Clinton the first black president, and Newsweek can call Barack Obama the first gay president, then I can call Oprah Winfrey the world's first book blogger. Okay, so Oprah's televised book club had all of the hallmarks that would come to characterize book blogs in the ensuing decade. A fresh, enthusiastic voice, a tone that was worlds apart from the educated dispassion and cool remove of book critics dispensing their judgment. Oprah didn't sound like a critic. She sounded like a friend, the woman next to you at the soccer game or the carpool lane who couldn't wait to tell you about the amazing book she just read and how much she loved it and how much you were going to love it too. And it was probably Richard Russo's Independence Falls. Every book that Oprah picked became an instant bestseller, ensuring that every writer unlucky enough to publish during the age of Oprah had to deal with well-meaning relatives who would pull you into a corner and whisper in the tones of having just received a divine revelation, "Have you thought about sending your book to Oprah?" Yes, Nana. Yes, I thought about sending my book to, didn't really do any good, but I thought about it. Yes, okay, so not all traditional critics were happy watching a chat show hostess more famous for her yo-yo dieting than her erudition commanding an army of readers. Oprah didn't care. At least she never responded publicly to the people who told her that she was doing reading wrong, that she was picking bad books, that she was trespassing on territory better left to the better educated. And then along came Jonathan Franzen, whose dealings with Oprah would demonstrate the perils of the interactive world, where readers and critics and authors can talk to each other instead of just about each other, and the conversations play out in real time. Okay, so everybody in this room probably knows what happened. September of 2001, Oprah picks Franzen's The Corrections for her book club. Franzen, a self-proclaimed writer in the high literary tradition, who takes himself very seriously, went on what I would describe as a kind of foot-in-mouth world tour. While Franzen allowed that Oprah had picked some good books, he told an Oregon public radio station that she'd also, quote, picked enough schmaltzy one-dimensional ones that I cringe. Clumsily backpedaling in USA Today, he acknowledged that Oprah had done a lot of good, that she was a hero, but not, quote, a hero of mine, per se. You sort of had to wonder where the publicist with the taser and the hook was at this point. Because I know if I'd done that, like if Oprah had picked my book and I'd said anything like that, like I think my publisher would have held me down and muzzled me until it was time to be on the show, right? I mean, like, did he not want to sell 1 million books? Like, what was going on there? Anyhow, okay, so stung, Oprah rescinded her invitation, saying that Franzen was clearly uncomfortable about coming on her show and that it was never her intention to make anyone uncomfortable. She is so classy. I would not have been that classy. But it's what happened to her book club in the wake of that mess that would foreshadow blogger, author, publisher interactions in the world to come. You know that old Eleanor Roosevelt saying about how no one can make you feel inferior without your consent? It's my belief that Oprah Winfrey respected Jonathan Franzen, respected all writers a lot. When he said, essentially, that her picks were unworthy, that cut deep. 3 books after The Corrections, Oprah shuttered the club. When she started it up again, she stuck to the classics, until her disastrous 2006 choice of James Fry, whose memoir turned out to not be what the kids call true. After that egg meets face moment where Fry's publisher Nan Talese went on TV to proclaim that readers did not deserve anything better than the appearance of truthiness as opposed to actual truth, Oprah's picks tapered off, becoming once or twice a year events instead of monthly ones. In December of 2010, the club limped off into the sunset with the safest of safe choices, Charles Dickens' A Tale of Two Cities and Great Expectations. They had the worst sales of any previous picks, probably because most of us had read them in 10th grade. The book club had become irrelevant. Oprah had become just another critic, marching in lockstep with the Times and the New Yorker, playing it safe, adding her limp, belated Me Too when they heaped laurels on Cormac McCarthy or Jeffrey Eugenides. If Oprah was one of the first book bloggers, then I was one of the first wave of novelists who used blogs to invite readers to step into our parlors and into our lives, to share intimate details about what went on behind the scenes and between the books. As an ex-newspaper reporter, someone who typically enjoys human interaction, the chance to talk to readers, to get my words out there and say something in the year-long silence between novels was a thrilling opportunity. I remember going to my publisher and saying, I'm going to start a weblog. Then I remember going to my publisher and explaining what a weblog was. In January of 2002, I launched what was then called Snark Spot. That was my weblog name. And as bloggers did, I treated my life as material. I wrote about my family and my dog, my seemingly endless first pregnancy, my Bradley Method birth classes, and taking my mom on book tour, where our publisher would put us up in really nice hotels. My sister and I used to do Mutual of Omaha-inspired voiceovers. We'd watch my mom sort of like wander through the lobby, and we'd say, "The animal out of its habitat is clearly uncomfortable in this strange new environment. Let's watch as it approaches the minibar." And my mom would turn around and say, "Put those Oreos down, girls. Do you know how many cookies you can buy for $5 at the grocery store down the street? Are you blogging this, Jenny?" So I put it all out there. I wrote about my family, I wrote about my kids, and some of what I wrote about came from the bad place. Did the world really need a sentence-by-sentence, word-by-word deconstruction of Curtis Sittenfeld's New York Times takedown of Melissa Banks' new novel, which she slammed for being chick-lit? Maybe not. Curtis and I are actually friends right now, so this is actually cool. She reads my books every year, and I read her books every 5 when she writes them. But remember, these were the early days of blogging, the days when you could, indeed, dance like no one was watching. And for me, knowing that books like mine, with naked legs and cheesecake on a pink cover, were unlikely to be hailed as the successor to Salinger or Updike, blogging was a chance to defend myself and my genre. To be a voice that said, in spite of the cutesy covers, the breezy tones, the bad boyfriends and bosses, in spite of the legion of detractors, and eventually an entire anthology challenging my genre's worth, some of those books had something to say. I'd found my voice, and then along came the New York Times. In 2005, I got a call asking if I'd be interviewed for a story about mothers who blogged. I said, sure. Note to future people who get calls from Times reporters: beware the reporter who begins his interview by stating, "My wife loves your books," okay? Because what that means is, I don't read that shit. Some of you will probably remember the Moms Who Blog story. As it turns out, the Times was not so much a fan of quote-unquote mommy blogs. The headline of the story was "Mommy, parentheses, and me." And in the first few paragraphs, the reporter observed that more often than not, the moms who wrote these blogs were narcissists, and the sites were, quote, "shrines to parental self-absorption." Narcissism? Self-absorption? Seriously? I didn't even know I was writing a mommy blog. I thought I was writing a blog about being a mother with a job. I thought I was being funny and informative and helpful to the rest of the struggling new moms trying to balance work and family and the inevitable loss of identity that goes along with becoming woman pushing stroller, or these days, woman wearing sling. I imagined I was sort of an Irma Bombeck for the E-age. Then again, I also didn't know I'd been writing chick lit, so it's usually the Times that has to tell me this stuff. Then, in the summer of 2005, just before the film version of In Her Shoes came out, the paper sent a reporter to my house in Philadelphia to do a profile of me for the Sunday magazine. I cannot tell you how excited I was, even though the reporter they sent was better known for her hit pieces than her Valentines. This meant they thought I was interesting. Oh my God, maybe it would be one of those pieces that would make everybody want to read my books. They like me. They really, really like me. Long story short, not so much. The Times didn't think I was interesting as much as I was a symptom of what it saw as literature's wrong turn, a turn towards social media and public connection as opposed to artistic isolation and dignified silence. I can only recall bits and pieces of my day in the reporter's company. My subconscious has helpfully blocked most of it out. But there are things that I do remember, like the reporter wandering through my bedroom, picking up a photograph of my sister, considering it with a sneer, and saying, "Well, she's not that pretty. I thought that was you." Okay, those of you who've seen or read In Her Shoes know that it's about these two sisters, and one is very good looking and one not so much. So I was standing there thinking, you just insulted the fuck out of both of us. I remember her asking me over lunch, "Do you write your blog so that people will like you?" And oh, if I'd just been the tiniest bit quicker, I would have said, no, silly. That's what the blowjobs are for. Did my publisher leave yet? Blowjobs, yeah. Okay, bottom line, as the day went on, and there were 10 questions about my blog for everyone about my books, it became apparent that the piece was not going to resemble the paper's 4,000-word mash note to Jonathan Safran Foer, that it was instead going to be something that I regretted, possibly for the rest of my life. When I told the reporter that we were done, that I wasn't going to sit for the portrait and there wasn't going to be a story, she was furious, complaining bitterly about the time she'd, quote, wasted traveling to Philadelphia and reading my books, which erased pretty much all the doubts I had about what the story was going to be like. No one can hurt your feelings without your permission. I gave the New York Times permission. And I should maybe give you a little background about this part of the speech, because when I told my agent and my best friend and my publicist I was going to talk about this, they're like, maybe you should just say a large Northeastern newspaper. Because if they piss off the Times, they're going to take it out on your next book, which is, it's called The Next Best Thing, and it comes out July 3rd. And I thought about it, and I said, okay, what else can they do to me? What other painful, embarrassing thing can happen? Can they have Henry Alford say something bitchy about me in the style section? Oh, that happened. Can they quote Jonathan Galassi, who is Jonathan Franzen's editor, making fun of my made-up German? Oh, that happened too. Can they misrepresent my sales on their bestseller list? Well, this week, my current paperback, Then Came You, is the number 8 best-selling trade paperback on Bookscan, which is said to account for 70 to 80% of all sales. And for the same time period, it's number 22 on the Times list. And I know what will happen, because this is what happens with every book ever since 2005. My publisher will go to the Times and say, we think Jen's book should be higher on your list, and here are our numbers supporting this claim. And the Times will say, we think Jen's book is right where it should be, and we're not showing you our numbers, they're proprietary. And there's nothing to be done, and I don't expect any better. A sale is a sale, and as long as I know that people are reading my books and enjoying them, I really can't do much about what the Times says or where they put them on their list, even though it sort of is a bummer. But anyone who's taken a women's studies class can tell you this. As long as there's a woman who writes about her own life, there's someone, sometimes a man, sometimes another woman, sometimes an entire institution. It's there to tell her that what she's written is unworthy, unimportant, beneath notice, not real literature, not worth taking seriously. In the years to come, I was still writing my novels. The Times was still ignoring them, except I think in the 2009 Vagina Roundup. See, I told you I would say vagina. Thank you, yes. Where Janet Maslin allowed that, quote, Ms. Weiner's characters are warmly and realistically drawn, which would have been nice if the article had not been headlined, The Girls of Summer, Surveying This Season's Chicklet. Vagina Roundup. And literally, literary writers were still stepping up to tell me that my novels were unworthy and I should be turning my skills toward more serious matters. Jane Smiley actually reviewed Certain Girls in the Philadelphia Inquirer, and she had no way of knowing this, but that article came out the day of my daughter's Hebrew baby naming, which meant that my entire extended family was in town to read the paper. That sucked. I mean, because there you are, standing up in Temple, it's you, your husband, the baby, and everybody Jane Smiley, dag. Anyhow, I loved writing my novels. But in terms of blogging, I was going through sort of a dark night of the soul, second and third guessing everything I wrote. Is this an overshare? Is this too personal? Is it silly? Is it disreputable? Is it girly? Who am I writing for? My mom, my readers, the reporters and editors of the Times, the paper I'd spent my entire life reading? I had lost my social media mojo until Twitter, The Bachelor, and my fellow writers helped me find it again. I was a Twitter resistor. I'd been pulled onto MySpace. I liked Facebook fine. I thought, do I really need a new microblogging site, just one more item on the daily to-do list? As it turns out, novels are fine, and blogging is fun, but Twitter could possibly be the thing that I was born for. Twitter's taught me discipline, the skill of being funny or poignant or pithy in 140 characters. It's let me connect with readers in a more intimate way than I ever could before. It's let me talk to other authors and hang out with them around the virtual water cooler to talk shop. It's given me people. Twitter is like being at the biggest, best cocktail party in the world where I can talk about almost anything to almost anyone. Big books, reality TV, making an ass of myself in front of Jeffrey Eugenides, or how when your 3-year-old says she just wants to hold the bottle of sparkly red nail polish, she is totally, totally lying. Best of all, Twitter has given me a place to light a candle instead of cursing the darkness. A place where I can not only point out sexism and discrimination in the publishing world, I can actually do something about it, supporting other authors in ways that weren't available when my first book was published. And it's something I think that all bloggers can do for books they love. Case in point, I adored Sarah Pakanan's first novel, The Opposite of Me. And I remember the women who blurbed Good in Bed when it first came out. Women who had no connection to me at all, not through agent or editor or publisher. They just liked the book. When I got those blurbs, I swore that I would never be a non-blurbing writer, that if I had a chance to help debut novelists as a way of paying forward the generosity my peers had shown me, I would do it. And social media gave me the chance. Sarah had smartly recognized the importance of pre-orders in getting her book on people's radar. She organized a contest and lined up prizes for people who ordered the book the Tuesday before it was published. I decided that for that day, I would offer a signed copy of one of my books to everyone who ordered Sarah's. The response was more than I think any of us imagined. I tweeted up a storm linking to Sarah's first chapter and where you could buy the book, and eventually mailed out more than 400 copies of my own books. The Opposite of Me cracked the online bestseller list at Barnes & Noble and Amazon, and went into its third printing before it had been published. The book and Sarah also got written up on a bunch of blogs and even newspapers that might have dismissed her book as her excellent book as another piece of disposable chick-lit. And my new path was clear. I continued to do Q&A and interviews and giveaways with Emma Donahue, whose book Room took the country by storm, and with Liz Moore, a fellow Philadelphian and rising star in literary fiction, whose book Heft broke my heart. I've been thrilled to help spread the word about writers from Gillian Madoff to Julie Buxbaum to poor Buzz Bissinger, who only got 1 Times review instead of the 2 I thought he should have expected. I am so pleased to be in a position to do this instead of just complaining about the Times bias, that I can now be part of someone else's magic, that I can be the one sprinkling the fairy dust. If you've got a blog, you can do this too. I'm not saying never write bad reviews or that there's no place in the world for some well-deserved snark. I'm not saying not to be honest. But there is something to be said for talking up the things you love instead of talking down the things you hate. And so, in closing, bloggers of 2012, I would tell you this. No matter what you blog about, there will always be someone there to try to slap you down, to tell you it's unworthy, undignified, silly, and girly. Ignore them. In Oprah's day, blogging existed as a corrective. It filled in the blanks that mainstream critics ignored, considering the books and genres that were beneath them, pointing out what the mainstream was covering badly or missing entirely. And bloggers continue to serve this role in different and dazzling ways. Janice Herrera, aware that statistically women writers are underrepresented on review pages, pledged that 50% or more of her 1-minute book reviews would go to women. Carlene Bryce launched When White Readers Meet Black Writers, a, quote, sometimes serious, sometimes lighthearted plea for everyone to give Black authors a try. In her video, she demystified the choices, pointing out that books by Black authors are, quote, made of paper, just like other books. That's not too scary, is it? Twitter is a place where Jodi Picoult and I can tell the world that the New York Times does not cover popular fiction by women the same way it covers popular fiction by men. It's a place where Slate's website for women can tweet statistics supporting that indeed women are less frequently reviewed. It's where any number of other tweeters can say that Jodi and I are just jealous and bitter and PMSing and that our books suck. And the conversation rolls on. Because as painful as it sometimes feels, social media is a conversation, and there's always someone new to talk to and something new to talk about. As a writer, Twitter has been invaluable. It's let me listen to my readers. It's let me ask them for help when deciding where to buy ads or even which author photo to use. My favorite example in The Next Best Thing, coming out July 3rd from Atria Books, one of the main characters is in a wheelchair. I found Priscilla Headland, who blogs as Wheelchair Mommy on Twitter, and she was kind enough to take an early look at the book and tell me what I got right and what I got wrong. As bloggers, you help readers just by being there, by tweeting about what you're reading, by answering our questions, by covering the books and genres that the mainstream ignores, or covering popular books in a way the mainstream can't. Anyone could review Chad Harback or do a Q&A with Kate Christensen. But how many people would think to do a video of them baking protein bars with Harback or ask Kate Christensen for her playlist? When the mainstream zigs, bloggers can zag. Where dead tree writers are stuck with the demands of the forum, 500 words with a thumbs up or thumbs down at the end, with attention paid to big releases from big houses, bloggers are limited by nothing but their own imagination. Bloggers can be passionate where their print peers have to be objective. They can be silly, enthusiastic, cheerleaders who'd shout the good news from the mountaintop when they found a book they loved, or gleefully eviscerate something they couldn't stand. And it's been a pleasure to watch that passion make its way from the mainstream as the circles of the Venn diagram have overlapped and melted into non-existence, where writers who got their start on blogs now review for NPR and mainstream critics do video reviews with their heads draped in breakfast meat. So, advice. I would encourage you to be as transparent as possible, to remember that some of those old rules about conflict of interest and full disclosure were in place for a reason, to ensure that the reader was getting a review untainted by money or personal loyalty or rivalry. If your blog has a money-making component that's not as obvious as an ad or a tip cup at the bottom of a review, spell it out as clearly and visibly as possible. Speak in your own voice, with the courage of your own convictions, about the books and authors and topics you love, no matter who tells you you shouldn't love them. Dance like no one's watching, sing like no one can hear, tweet like your mom is not online. Be brave, be smart, be creative and kind. Above all, be yourself. And I promise, readers will find you. Thanks. And now, if anyone has questions, books, blogs, vaginas, my mom, yes.
I'm from Philadelphia.
Hi.
I'm a fellow reporter, and I remember you.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
And you were my hero.
Oh my gosh.
The best writer, the best teachers.
Thank you.
It was just wonderful.
She's paying me lots of compliments. Uh-huh.
I was wondering, do you miss being on the newspaper, the Daily?
Do I miss being at a newspaper? I mean, it's so funny. For the longest time, I have this like 20 pages of advice for writers on my blog, and I would tell young writers, go get a job at a newspaper. Like, go find some like tiny, crappy paper, someplace you've never lived before, write 5 stories a day, meet all kinds of new people, be new places, see new things. It will do wonders for your writing. Unfortunately, those jobs don't really exist anymore, and now everybody is like a content provider on a couch in Brooklyn. You know, I loved being a reporter. I loved it, loved it, loved it. I loved like just like getting in a car with my notebook and going to cover some disaster or concert or the Spice Girls or WrestleMania or whatever pop culture or thing was going on. And I do miss it, but newspapers are struggling badly right now. They haven't figured out a way to sort of monetize content. And they're, you know, I still have friends at the Philadelphia Inquirer, and, you know, I watched buyouts happen and cutting happen and people losing their jobs. So I do miss it, but I'm really, really glad I landed on my feet. And I'm really, really glad that blogging and tweeting gives me the kind of access to people, the way to talk to them every day, the way I could when I had a column. So yeah, I do miss it, but I've found a substitute. Yes? Over here? Oh, there's a microphone. That's what you're showing me. Okay. I'm just not used to random men pointing at things. Yeah, do you have a question? No? Just waving? Nice sweater. That's cool. Anybody over there? Yes.
Hi.
Hello.
Wanted to find out what was the pub date again of your new book?
The pub date of my, oh God, love you. It's called The Next Best Thing. It's coming July 3rd. I spent last year in Hollywood running a sitcom with Raven-Symoné. Perhaps you didn't see it. It was on ABC Family, and like honestly, the hardest part was trying to explain to my Nana the difference between ABC Family and ABC. Right? She's like, so it's ABC. I'm like, no, it's ABC Family. She's like, so it's channel 6. I'm like, I don't know what channel it is on your cable box. She's like, but it's with Dancing with the Stars. I'm like, no, that's ABC. You need ABC Family. It's on cable. And she's like, so it's ABC. I'm like, oh my God. Like, I'll send you videos, okay? Just never mind. So it's about a showrunner who's 28 years old. She has had her heart broken by a fellow writer. She gets her show picked up. She's in love with her boss. The boss is in a wheelchair. She thinks he wants nothing to do with her. And she's trying to make her show and navigate her love life. And her grandmother's getting married. So there's all that going on. So July 3rd. It has a swimming pool on the cover. You can't miss it. Yes, of course.
I just wanted to thank you for changing the trajectory of my book. I'm Jillian Mehta.
Hi, Jillian. Oh my God. You guys, okay. Her book is I Couldn't Love You More, and it is fantastic, and it's out now, and there's a sandcastle on the cover, and it's about blended families, love and loyalty and children, and it's funny and heartbreaking, and everybody please go, like, do me a solid and go buy it, okay? It's like, really?
I wanted to thank you because of also the book blogger community, the trajectory of this book has changed. I mean, it was considered, just a regular book that was coming out, and it's been doing really well, and I think it's all because of you, and it's certainly because of you.
Well, thank you guys, okay? Yes.
Do you know the numbers in terms of how big this community is in terms of book blogging? And it seems to be there are a lot of women discussing this
Yes.
issue here.
Yes.
There are a lot of degreed women who
Yes.
have gone into writing programs. Their professors are not necessarily all female.
Yep.
And there seems to be no statistics that I know about, no matter how many industry associations I join,
Yep.
about what our impact is, about banking for writers or banking for writers that become authors or press people that leave and become bloggers. And
Right.
you could go on and on and on about the creative community
Yep.
and our impact. But obviously people want to have families and use technology. So could you let us know if narrators are working with bloggers, if videographers are working with bloggers, and if we are helping our own neighborhoods have more money in them?
Yeah, I mean, I think that it's been interesting for me watching where ad dollars have moved, because it used to be when you had a book come out, you'd buy that announcement ad in the Times, that full page. It would come on a Tuesday or a Wednesday or Thursday, Jonathan Grisham's new book, Nicholas Sparks' new book. And then it was sort of like, okay, we don't really think people are reading the paper the way they used to. They're reading it on handhelds, on iPads. People Magazine, to me, is now the go-to place, and People, I think, has something like a 70% female readership. So, I mean, not to diss men, but the last statistic I saw is that 20% of fiction is bought by men. And so if you write fiction and you're trying to be smart about spending your money, like, you don't ever want to cut men out. You don't ever want to say to an audience, you're not welcome. But you do want to be strategic about where you're spending your ad dollars. And so for me, it's like, it's People, it's billboards, and it's lots of blogs. And it's blogs about not only books, but blogs about fashion and celebrity and other places that we know that sort of my demographic visits. So I do, in terms of how many bloggers are women, I mean, like, look at this room. It's so interesting, and I don't understand, I don't understand a lot of things. I don't understand how the Times works. I don't understand how their attitude towards women's fiction, given that so many women are readers and seem to read so much more than men. I don't know how they can have, for example, a regular column devoted to crime, which we know men read, and women read crime too, but like every Sunday there's Marilyn Stasio talking about crime, and I'm like, where is the comparable roundup of romance? romance sells way more than crime does. Like, why is it invisible to the times? So work to be done is what I would say. Other questions? Yes?
Can you tell us what you're working on next?
Can I tell you what I'm working on next? Oh boy, is that a good question. Right, I'm working on publicizing my new book, The Next Best Thing, which comes out July 3rd from Atrium. No, let's see. I have that book. It's a month away. So honestly, like what I'm doing now is like lots of interviews, Q&As, planning the book tour. I'm thinking about what's next, and I'm not exactly sure, but I have an idea about women who become obsessed with each other online. It's so interesting. I have a title too, which I'm going to give it to this room. Nobody use it because I'll hunt you down and cut you. But I want to call it the overshare because it's such an interesting concept. Like, what is an overshare? What's too much, and who gets to say, right? Because like, there's someone I know online who like, she's not exactly an enemy, but she's not exactly a friend either. And I know everything about her, from how much her son weighs to how much she paid for her house to like all kinds of completely inappropriate. There is no way in hell that even her best friend should know this, but it's all online. So like, I know it, and like there's a word, like hate viewing is when you watch a show you hate just to make fun of it. And I think I think that there's gotta be some kind of online equivalent for that. But I have this idea of, it's like two women who become obsessed with each other who are both trying to put perfected versions of themselves online while living very different lives in real time. So that's a big, vague, my agent is in here somewhere and she's probably taking notes and she's going to give me comments when I'm off the stage. So please keep asking me questions. Yes?
I was curious. I'm a teen fiction blogger at Mandy's
Hi.
Bookshelf, and I saw that you tweeted Sarah Dessen on there.
Yes.
And your work with and promoting women's fiction has really inspired me because teen fiction has a lot of the same problems, mostly because
Yes.
a lot of teen writers are also women.
Yes.
And I was curious, I don't know how much you know about teen fiction or how involved you are, but I was curious how you think that that's changing. I mean, you never used to see reviews in the New York Times, and I'm starting to see them
Yes.
for teen books.
Pamela Paul, who is in charge of their children's coverage, I think is very smart, and I think she's the one that's driving the reviews that we're seeing now. But OMG, do you guys have it worse? Like, because, I mean, do you remember that whole debate in the Wall Street Journal about, like, is it too dark? Like, if you, do you remember? Duh. Like, but if you have a book where there's cutting, which is a thing, that happens, is that going to make girls who read it either want to cut themselves or feel that what they're doing is somehow justified because now they're reading about it in a book? Now, I tend to have a little more respect for my readers than that, even teenage readers, to think that just because you see something in a book does not mean you're going to go out and do it, like marry a vampire and have his vampire baby. Haven't really seen a lot of that happen, have you? Right? So, but yeah, I mean, I've been fascinated by that debate, like the how dark is too dark in YA. And I think, like, as a teenager, like, I would have felt pretty good reading some of that. Like, I think Judy Blume had some darkness in there, along with stuff like masturbation and menstruation and where are my boobs, God? I did not have that problem. I was like, are you there, God? It's me, Jen. Could you stop this shit? Because, like, I'm not going to be able to wear anything. It's embarrassing. Everybody's staring at me. But, you know, that and then the whitewashing thing, the characters of color being depicted as white on book covers, which is fascinating to me. Because you've got authors saying, that's not what I imagined my character looking like, and you've got publishers saying, hey, we've got to sell this thing. And it's a really, really interesting throwdown. So I love YA. I read a ton of it. I read Hunger Games, you know, obviously I'm reading Pure right now. I read Twilight just to see what the fuss was about, and I get it, and the whole like vampire baby thing. You know, but you know, I love YA, and I think that like some of the smartest voices and some of the sharpest observations about what's happening in the world now are happening in that part of literature. So, yay for you.
Thank you.
Yes. Anyone else over this portion? Yes, way in the back, waving in the pink. Hi.
I wanted to ask because recent months, I wanted to ask what you thought about authors who react extremely negatively towards book bloggers. Because I found that because book bloggers don't have, for instance, a publication behind them, a lot of authors who take issue with negative reviews can become incredibly inappropriately vocal about it.
The Greek seaman's wife, was that the one that? Yeah. For those of you who don't know, there was a self-published book that could have used an editor. I'm going to say that nicely. The book could have used an editor, and probably not the word seaman in the title. So basically, this website published a review, and it wasn't even that bad of a review. It was just like this book really could have used an editor, and there was this and that, and the writer went fucking batshit. And I think I'm saying that conservatively. She went off the rails, and there was like a 500 comment stream, and basically people were piling on her and saying, oh my God, she's crazy, someone get this woman offline. I mean, I don't think there's any way for an author to respond to a bad review without looking bad. I mean, I think that sort of talking about what Jane Smiley said about my book years later is about as close as you can come. And if you're saying it's indicative of sort of a broader dismissal of a genre instead of she's being mean to me, you know, that's always a better way to handle it. But I think you're absolutely right. I think that lots of readers that would not feel empowered to go after the Times or Newsweek or the New York Times or the New Yorker feel that a blogger is just another person, or if you're really being mean, a loser in pajamas in her mom's basement who only has internet access when her mom's out of the house, and will respond to a bad review accordingly. So, I mean, if I could give authors like Author 101, it would just be like, just move on. Like, don't look, like, don't set up Google alerts, don't read your reviews. I don't read mine. Like, negative, positive, anything in between. They're going to get in my head, and they're going to make me crazy, and I'm going to spend 3 days, like, having a dialogue with the person. Like, I remember when Good in Bed, like, somebody wrote, like, I hate this character because she's obsessed with stupid pop culture. And for 3 days of my book tour, I went around being like, well, so what if she's obsessed with stupid pop culture? She's 28, she's supposed to care about that stuff, and who are you? And you're probably old, and, you know, like on, and now that I'm old, I feel really guilty about that, but just, yeah, so I think that if you're a writer, and I don't know how many people in this room are writers, but like just like Frankie says, like just relax, don't do it. Does anybody even remember that reference? Thank you. Thank you. And if you're a blogger who gets an author who's going batshit insane on you, I think what you say is, thank you for taking the time to read my review and respond, period. I think that's it. And you don't engage, you don't poke the crazy. Like, this is something I've learned in my 42 years, and I might get it tattooed somewhere, don't poke the crazy. Yeah, except tattoos stretch, and then like it's just unfortunate when you're 80. But yeah, you know, I think I agree that people that feel like they can't go after the big guys go after the little ones, and it says more about the author than it does about the medium. So I think if you're an author and you have to say something, you say thank you for taking the time to review my book, to think about it, to write about it, to publish your thoughts. I appreciate your time. If it's a negative review, that is the only thing you can say without coming out of it looking like an asshole. And if you're a blogger and somebody's going off on you, all you say is, thank you for taking the time to read my review and respond. There, see, everyone's happy. Right? Anyone want to solve world peace, like Middle Eastern things now? Like, I can help, I'm here for you. And yes, over there.
Can I? Oh, sorry.
Or just yell. I have good hearing, bad eyesight, but.
I just have some questions about Twitter and your blogging process.
Yes.
Like when you tweet,
Uh-huh.
I recently saw a writer, Anna Luckler, at a conference. She said that she does like 7 drafts before each tweet.
What?
Do you guys do any of those drafts?
Does she have kids? Who is this person? Anna who?
Luckler, she was a dictionary.
Uh-huh.
She went through this massive process of
Right. Uh, I have enough trouble with one. Go on. Sorry. Uh-huh. You know what? Okay, I was laughing, but I do. I draft tweets. I play with them until they sound right to me. I play with them until they fit. But sometimes I'm just like in line at Starbucks and I'm like, cannot believe fucking hipster in green Doc Martens tweet. You know, like sometimes it's just that. And sometimes it's more than that. And sometimes it's, you know, I always try to tweet links. Like I think if I had sort of like rules for tweeting, it would be like, be funny, if funny is who you are, if funny is what you do. Like, tweet links. Everyone likes a link. Like Neil Gaiman tweets links, even though he could tweet like his bowel movements and people would like that. I mean, I follow him, you know, like, but yeah, I do. I mean, there has to be some editing going into it because like that's writing that you're publishing, you know, and I think you should never ever forget it. When you hit that tweet button, that is published forever and ever and ever. So yes, edit.
Jennifer?
Yes.
Hello. I'm Inga. I'm standing here behind the microphone.
Oh, there you are. Hello.
I'm
Hi.
from a blog called Me and Reading in Estonia, in Europe.
Oh gosh. Hi.
Hi. My question is regarding translations of your books.
Uh-huh.
I know that you are very popular in US and also in Europe.
I'm huge in Japan.
English. I know that, yes.
Yeah, it's huge. Just
So I'm curious if your books are already translated into other languages than
They are
English.
30 languages, but I don't know if Estonian is one of them.
No, it's not yet.
It's not? Okay. Could we just add extra vowels to the end?
No, I can read in English, no problem with that. So the other question is about your books being made to movies.
Right.
Any plans on that?
You know, what I tell people is that I had like basically the perfect experience an author can have having a book made into a film. And I know that it was a perfect experience because I did a panel with 3 other authors who had books made into movies, okay? Claire Cook, who wrote Must Love Dogs, which was made into a movie with John Cusack, Jacqueline Michard, who's Deep End of the Ocean, Michelle Pfeiffer, and, oh my God, blanking on her name, Practical Magic, Anne Hoffman. Okay, so we're doing this event. It's raising money for a homeless women's charity, okay? So like we're all on our best behavior. I'm not cursing, okay? That is how best behavior I am on. So they show clips of everybody's movies, and they show a clip of Must Love Dogs, and Claire is talking about like being on the set, and they gave her a director's chair with her name on it, and it was amazing. And then they show Deep End of the Ocean, and Jackie's talking about being an Oprah pick, and oh my God, that was incredible. And they show In Her Shoes, and I talk about getting my Nana to be an extra, and how I was finally the #1 grandchild, which is really hard because my mom is gay, and my Nana's still pissed about it. And then they show the scene where it's Nicole Kidman and Sandra Bullock dancing around in their nightgowns to put de lime into coconut. And the lights come up, and Alice Hoffman leans into the microphone and says, "I fucking hated that movie." And all these like nice New England ladies that are there to like give money to the homeless are just like, ha, ha. So, you know, I loved, like, they got a great screenwriter, they wrote a great script, they had a great cast. You know, I think there were a lot of Jewish men very happy to believe that Cameron Diaz was Jewish. My brothers were thrilled. Yeah, and so, like, that went so well that, like, honestly, like, I know that there are writers, like Susan Isaacs, whose book Shining Through is one of my favorites, and that was made into a movie with, like, Melanie Griffith as a Jew, and that wasn't so good. And, you know, I think that there are writers, or like John Irving's A Door in the Floor, which was Simon Birch, which was part of, Owen Meany, thank you. Okay, they messed that up. And I think that there are authors that have to spend a lot of their career saying, you know, that's really not the way I saw it. And I don't have to say that. Like, they kept so much of what made In Her Shoes. Like, they kept the Jewish aspects. They kept the old people. They set it in Philadelphia. They didn't go shoot in Vancouver with, like, a styrofoam Liberty Bell. So, I mean, I got no complaints. If it happens again, that's fantastic. If it doesn't happen again, like, I will live my life happily.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Yes, in the brown.
You did a really brilliant analysis of how blogging community
Yes.
its flaws. Where do you see this going in the next 3 to 5 years?
You know, I think bloggers are going to become more and more important. I think
But does that also mean that the New York Times, I mean, all the newspapers, as you pointed out,
are cutting.
struggling?
Yeah.
Are they, are they becoming less relevant?
They are. I mean, I think like that's like a bold and sort of scary thing to say, but from what I've seen, like okay, newspapers need advertising dollars to support their book sections. If I'm a novelist, I am not spending my ad dollars in newspapers necessarily. I'm going to spend them where I know my readers are going, and that's blogs. So I don't know what's going to happen. I mean, I don't know how newspapers are going to make themselves more palatable to a community that's gotten used to a level of interactivity that newspapers struggle to provide and a level of coverage that they can't. I mean, there's just not enough room for them to cover every book that blogs can. So I'm not going to be surprised to see newspapers move the entirety of their book coverage online. I think that's what's going to happen next.
Some of what I see is that, there are all of these niche blogs.
Mm-hmm.
And certainly niche publications,
Mm-hmm.
magazines, trade magazines, whatever they're, very, very helpful.
Yeah.
But we're losing that general space. to
Right.
discover.
Yes.
And that's the space that the newspaper one time held.
Right.
But for all the reasons that you outlined with the New York Times, it became,
Yeah, for those of you who can't hear, she's asking about sort of newspapers providing general coverage of sort of the book of the moment, right? Like the new John Irving comes out, everybody covers it. The new Michael Chabon comes out, everybody covers it. I think newspapers are going to continue to do that, but I think that they also are going to recognize that there's much more to be covered and there's other places to do it. I mean, online is endless. And as Joe Conrath says, those books stay on the shelves forever. And the reviews stay on the shelves forever. So I think we're going to see a movement in that direction is what I believe, I think. What do we think? Like one more question? How are we doing? Yes, in the back.
What do you think about indie writers and do you have any advice that you would give to
Indie writers, hello. I actually do. I have a whole thing on if you go to my weblog, my website, there it is, there's the word. It's jenniferweiner.com because I am super fucking creative. And if you go there, there's about 20 pages of advice for writers, including what do I do if I can't get an agent, or what do I do if I have an agent and can't get a publisher, okay? And I think that every writer has to answer that question for herself and decide, like, okay, is it this book? Like, is this, many writers have the book that got them an agent that didn't get published. Many writers have that book. Many other writers have the book that lives in a shoebox under their beds at 221 Bainbridge Street in Philadelphia that will never, ever be published because it's a piece of shit. I think that, but I do think that, I mean, everybody, like, every editor has the story of the big book they missed, okay? There are editors who passed on Bridget Jones's Diary. There are editors who passed on The Lovely Bones. There are books that have been, somebody has said, like, my agent can't sell this, I'm gonna put it online, I'm gonna give it a great cover, I'm gonna give it a great blurb, let's see what happens. And there have been success stories. But I think you have to understand that success as an indie writer is about as rare as success as a mainstream writer, which is to say, don't quit your day job. So, but go to my website, there's a whole thing about it. You can read the whole thing about it. I thought about it more, so. All right, I'm gonna get a muffin, and thank you guys. This was fun and cool, and enjoy yourselves. Thank you.